Hi, I'm Angela R. Hughes. I am a historical fantasy author of the Once and Future Chronicles. And today I'm going to be reading you a chapter from Book One, Eleanor and the Song of the Bard. So without further ado, let's jump right in. It begins with the dreams. Merlin, Merlin, she called out, desperately reaching out towards him. Like a ghost, he could see her standing across the chasm, her arms outstretched and her raven black hair blowing behind her in the wildness of the wind. Please, Eleanor, Merlin cried out to her. Eleanor. He couldn't lose her this time. This time he would reach her. This time he would grip her hands and not let go. The wind tore violently between them like an angry beast threatening to separate them. Meanwhile, the mighty sounds of the drums of battle rang in Merlin's ears. Is that Arthur, upon the hill, with his Kimbrogi armed with spear and sword? Arthur! Arthur! He called out frantically. Arthur! Merlin was violently shaken awake. Great drops of sweat fell as he gasped for breath, his face pale. The dream had come once again, a torment in his sleep. Furiously, he gritted his teeth and stood to wipe his brow. Not again. Will these dreams never abate? He mechanically made his way toward the water basin, but stopped abruptly, caught by the sight of his own reflection. His long, dark curls twisted in strands across his face. His golden eyes were sunken and dull. He splashed his hand into the water and crumpled to the floor, his forehead sinking into his palms. He hated how old he appeared, ragged and forsaken. In truth, he was still a man, strong in his prime. Though, through grief, his face reflected something different. His magical life wasn't the result of sorcery, but a reality of an older time. His golden eyes, his mother said, were given to him because the great god desired him to see more deeply. But now, it was all fading. 4 long years he dwelt in Avalon, where the waves of time could not touch him. The sting of the memories of Camlin still burned in his mind. Alone he sat in a small stone chamber, listening to the voices of the monks outside. He ate little, drank less. Trance-like, he remained within his own mind, daring his life to be taken from him. It was here these mysterious dreams began. They invaded Merlin's sleep, even breaking into his waking mind, disturbing his dark solace. As one who knew the ways of the druids and the bards of old, he recognized signs from the stars, nature, and dreams. These visions were not just dreams. For the first time in years of his self-banishment, he knew something was being set in motion. But for what, he did not know. Desperately, he tried to ignore the dreams, but they kept coming relentlessly, night after night. With each dream, their reality drew nearer. He could feel it deep in his bones, a calling to come back awake to the world that needed him. Merlin, Merlin, the mysterious woman in his dream had called to him. She reached for him as if trying to save him from something. His heart yearned to save her too, but a mighty wind always pulled them apart as they struggled, reaching for each other. She was always in his mind, her beautiful eyes haunting him, and when he woke, her voice called to him, yet the brokenness of his heart resisted her. Who are you? Why are you disturbing me? He'd seethe. But in the dream, he would call back, Eleanor, stretching to reach for her. He felt there was something more he should want. He knew well the meaning of the dream, but he did not care. He had already resigned himself to nothingness. However, the dreams refused to give him that peace as they pointed a finger, judging his complacency and despair. He shouted at the sky, choose someone else. I'm done hoping for a new beginning that never comes, or once comes, dies like a flower in the cold of winter. He was forced to leave his chamber of stone and stormed about the isle in anger. It was the only way he hoped to clear the damned things from his mind. No! I do not want to see their faces. I should have stopped Arthur from leaving. I should have stayed to help, but ran away. I do not want to go back. In the dreams, he saw Arthur tall upon his black horse. He held a standard of red and gold, pointing at 2 stars brightly gleaming in the sky. The reminder of Arthur's glory tore open the wound of Merlin's great loss. Merlin tossed and turned within his chamber while a solitary candle burned slowly down to its wax in a small corner of the room, its light barely a flicker in the darkness. He mumbled as he wrestled on his mat, his voice increasing in the darkness. "No, no!" Merlin groaned. Then he shot straight up and shouted, "I will not go!" His outburst startled a young monk, causing him to drop the milk and bread he had brought for Merlin. The loud clang of the metal cup hitting the floor woke Merlin fully, causing an angry fire to burn in his eyes. "What are you doing here?" The monk stood silently, shaken by Merlin's aggressive tone. He placed his hand upon his chest and breathed out, composing himself. He bent down to clean the mess from the floor and lit a new candle. "This one has nearly gone out," the monk said. "As you are now awake, you may have need of a new light. Were you dreaming?" Merlin snapped. "I can make a candle burn without need of new. Are you the one they call Rian?" The young monk busied himself about the room. "I have seen and heard you about my chambers," Merlin continued. Rian bowed. "Yes, my lord?" "I am nobody's lord," Merlin growled, looking down at the floor. "You are Merlin, and you are one of the lords of Prydon's great kingdom." Merlin sprang towards the young monk and grabbed him by the front of his robe, pulling him close enough to look him in the eye. "You know nothing. Leave me," he commanded, tossing Rian to the floor. The monk stood up meekly, dusted off his robe, then boldly remarked, "I have not forgotten you, my lord, though you may have worked hard to forget yourself." Then he turned and left the room. Merlin felt like a fool. "What does he know?" he said aloud as he threw himself back onto his mat. "He of so few years, calling me out by my name as if he has any understanding of all that has been done. He knows nothing." Flashes of the woman calling him from his dreams were still fresh in his mind, and he wrestled within himself, unable to find peace from his efforts. The memory of her face, the sound of her voice, pointed him towards the mainland, calling him home. He spent the entirety of the next day shouting at the great god in the sky, ignoring the dreams as loudly as he could on the black rocks of the shore, flailing his arms and accusing the wind. "I have nothing left to give them. They will never forgive me. The magic you have given me did not stop the evils doing their work. And oh, how I tried. I tried and failed. I will try no longer. Where was your hand to stop Mordred? Why did you not come?" He yelled, exhausting his emotions. He was furious that the only reply he received was a gentle breeze and the sound of the water slapping at the shore. Merlin sighed deeply and returned to another fitful night of sleep. He saw Arthur again rising up over the hill behind him, a legion of Kimbrogi warriors armed with spears pointed high. Even as the scene unfolded before him, fits of grief and anguish rolled over him. All that could have been done, now gone. The glorious scene tortured his mind, forcing him to believe for something that had already been dead and buried. "Why?" he mumbled in his sleep. "Why?" And then something changed as he dreamt. He felt a sensation, like when the sun warms the skin after emerging from behind a cloud. He saw Arthur raise his sword and release a battle cry, and as the Kimbrogi roared, it shook Merlin completely, reaching down into him and igniting his heart. He felt unable to stop it. He awoke abruptly and found Rian sitting at the edge of his mat, hands upraised, silently praying. "Why are you here praying like this?" Merlin demanded, perplexed, a bit annoyed to see him. Rian said nothing. He sat in silence, his hands resting in his lap. "It's these dreams. They persist and will not let me go. All of this magic," Merlin exclaimed, waving his hand as if shooing a fly. "I'm working hard to ignore its stirrings. I'm for it no longer." Rian stood, bowed toward Merlin, and slipped quietly out of the chamber. Merlin rose and walked across the room to fill the emptiness of his stomach with the food Rian had left behind. "You," he whispered somberly, "great giver of dreams, Lead me to my rest. The more I look at them, the more I cannot ignore them. Please take them from me. For days this continued. Every day Merlin would shout, and in the evening he would find Rian at his feet in prayer. Finally, on the 7th day, Merlin said to Rian, "This does not help me, monk. Do I need to find somewhere else where I can be alone and away from you?" "Please do not, my lord," Rian finally spoke. "The great god does not desire that you should be alone while he shakes you awake. He said that he must cause you to dream until you decide to wake. The great god abandoned me and has left me here." "No, my lord." "But Arthur, he's dead. It's over. I am done now. Merlin stopped, gazing out across the room at the small, flickering candlelight. His eyes flooded with tears and deep sorrow. "I left them. I do not want to see the disappointment. Arthur and we were the promise, and we did not fulfill it. The great god, he left us. Arthur left us. I could not hold the kingdom in my hand alone." He lifted his fist into the air. "Nor could I keep Arthur alive." Merlin dropped his hand as if he were letting pebbles fall to the floor. "Let someone else do it. I have become old, and I want to be finished." Rian treaded carefully. "When you let yourself awaken, you will no longer feel this way. Though it will be hard to open your eyes, the strength is still in you. It only seems like you have lost it because you stopped moving forward." Merlin turned toward Rian, a glare in his eye as he hissed through his teeth. "You know nothing." He stormed furiously out into the dark night, not stopping until he stood at the very edge of a rock face hanging over the sea. Only small glints of light could be seen, reflecting off the ripples upon the water. Rian went after him, but dared not approach. Angry and defeated, Merlin glared out at the sea, facing for the first time the choice that stood before him. A vision of ELANOR, the woman from his dreams, took shape in the gray darkness before him. He struggled to resist her call. He knew he must leave and return once more to the world he left behind. Day by day, little pieces of him were surrendering to the call, and he could no longer deny it. "Rian," Merlin shouted, turning to look behind him. "I know you're there. It is all right. Come." He held his hand out to invite Rian forward. Slowly Rian emerged and stood behind Merlin. "You are not the one to be blamed for these dreams and how they have disturbed me." Putting his hand on Rian's shoulder, Merlin admitted, "I am afraid, Rian." He turned to look once more at the blackness of the sea. Pointing his finger, he proclaimed, "I shall go back to Caerleon. Tomorrow I will lift this cursed mist that has concealed me, and you will be free. Then I shall sail and return to my home."